Shalom to the elect of Israel, the hopeful elect, you Hebrew Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, West Indian and Haitians. Gotta give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule well, who teach well, and the sincere salutation to all the Akim, pushing this truth throughout the four winds of the earth, waking up the hopeful elect. Shalom to the Awaf who are listening and learning. I'm Isaiah, coming into another lesson of truth, facts, faith, and edification. This is an article that I was reading, and the title is, What was the original language of the Bible? Now, I was dealing with a pastor that came into my neighborhood that was passing out cards, trying to get people, trying to get these Israelites, these so-called Negroes and Latinos to come to their church. So I asked him a couple questions, and we started having a little kind of like a debate. And one of the guys that was with the pastor told me that the Bible was written. No, he said the original language was Aramaic, right? So I told him he need to go back and do some studies because Aramaic is not the language of the Bible. So he told me that I need to go back and do some studies because Hebrew wasn't the original language. So this is just a little lesson, Lord, and be edified, that the Bible, which we already know this, okay, it's been many lessons done on this many times over. But this is just me doing a lesson on this to prove the point. So Lord wouldn't be edified. Now this is the article, What was the original language of the Bible? So I'm going to read some of it. And it reads, this is by Nicola Denzi Lewis. Nicola Denzi Lewis. In 3rd century BCE, Alexandria, Egypt, one of the last of the pharaonic rulers, pharaonic rulers, Ptolemy Philadelphus II, wanted his Jewish subjects to have access to their own holy Bible, to their own holy books. Now I say Jewish subjects, which it ain't no Jewish. These was the Jews, right? Israelites. It said wanted his Jewish subjects to have access to their own holy books because of the far-reaching conquests of Alexander the Great. Greek had become the language of the Eastern Mediterranean, and Egypt was no exception. Those who identified themselves as Jewish could no longer read their own scriptures, meaning what? In Hebrew. Okay? So it's saying those who identified themselves as Jewish, which is Israelites, could no longer read their own scriptures. And Philadelphus was keen to help. More importantly, he wished to collect a compilation of these writings in Greek for Alexandria's famous library, which boasted a copy of every book in the known world. Calling together 70 of his best scholars, he charged them with a massive undertaking. Each one was to work independently, carefully translating Hebrew text to Greek. Okay? Translate Hebrew text to Greek. And then, according to legend, an extraordinary thing happened when Ptolemy compared the 70 different translations. He found that each copy was precisely like the next. there could be no explanation other than that God Himself directed the translators in their work. This new Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, known as the Septuagint, from the Greek for 70. So I guess known as the Septuagint, which Septuagint means from the Greek for 70. Was perfect. Was perfect, authoritative, useful, and above all, divinely inspired. Is the legend true? With a question mark. It says, is the legend true? The question mark. Some maintain that it is. Many scholars, however, prefer to consider this story not far as factual merit, but for what it tells us about the historic moment. For one thing, it reveals anxieties over the issue of words and text. Hold on, Salakia. And their revelations to idea of holiness. Do the Bible mean something different in its original language than it does in translation? This story about Ptolemy Philadelphus II suggests the opposite. In whatever language, the Bible is still a holy book because God directs the work of the translators. So, when you go to in the Apocrypha, the wisdom of Yahushua, the son of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, right? This is what it says. For the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. For in the 8th and 13th year coming into in the 8th and 30th year coming into Egypt, when Euergetes was king, it say, and continuing there some time, I found a book of no small learning. Therefore, I thought it most necessary for me to bestow some diligence and betrayal to interpret it, using great watchfulness and skill in the space to bring the book to an end and set it forth for them also, which in strange country are willing to learn, being prepared before in manner to live after the law. So, this is what Ptolemy said, calling together, Salakia. It said, this story about Ptolemy Philadelphus II suggests the opposite. In whatever language the book is still, so he's saying in whatever language, the book is still a holy book because God directed the work of the translators. No, that's not true, man. Okay, because the same thing other than Hebrew, in another language, you get a different vibe, man. So it say most of the Hebrew Bible was written in Hebrew, including all of the Old Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, but around 250 Bible verses of a total of 23,000, primarily portions of the book of Daniel, and 50th century BCE official court documents embedded in Ezra are in a related language, Aramaic. At different times in history, Aramaic transformed from an international language that united people living in different parts of the Assyrian Empire to the dominant language of Jews living in the Babylonian captivity. Okay. Hey, tell my Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, man, that was in the Babylonian captivity. To the official language of the western half of the Persian Empire, 500 BCE. It say during the time Hebrew was used less and less frequently until it came to be almost exclusively a religious or sacred language, which it is for the Hebrew Israelites. Still today, Jews study and memorize the Torah in Hebrew while worshiping in the synagogues. Now that's going into them so-called Jews, okay, which are not Israelites. Hebrew is the language of the, it's a liturgy. Hebrew is the language of the liturgy, and no synagogue is complete without at least one Torah scroll. It's a painstakingly hand copied in Hebrew and kept carefully protected at the front of the congregation. Although Jews may read the writings of the Torah in English as part of the Hebrew Bible or Tanakh, it is only in its original Hebrew that the text is particularly sacred. Okay? In its Hebrew text, it is particularly sacred. It said, the Alexandria Jews of the 3rd century BCE considered their Septuagint sacred, even though the Hebrew writings was translated into Greek. We do not know the answer to this question, but we do know that the centuries, the Septuagint was the predominant form in which the Jews read their scriptures. Because Alexander had them changed, and I had read he had 70 scholars, man, okay, to do individual work, man. It said even those Jews of ancient Palestine who spoke primarily Aramaic among themselves knew the scriptures in Greek, not Hebrew. When the Apostle Paul quotes scripture, it is the Septuagint that he cited, that he cites. Now, we know, I'm going to get there in Acts, that Paul said Yahushua, when he knocked him off the horse, spoke to him in Hebrew, man. Okay? It said, but what about the New Testament? It's written in a form of Greek that most educated people of the 1st century CE use every day, known as Koine, common Greek. It was simpler in its style, and grammar that classical Greek, and it was probably easier for non-native speakers of Greek to learn. While Yahushua and his disciples would have spoken Aramaic. That's a lie. Okay? That's a lie. So many Christians counter, however, that the process of translating scripture from Aramaic to Greek to English or whatever language was divine, inspired, and guided by God, and thus can have no mistake. In its most strict form, this idea is called biblical inerrancy or biblically inflatability, and it is a handmark of American fundamentalists and evangelical Protestantism. This view holds that there are no such things as errors because scribes and scholars translate the Bible from its original language, which is the Hebrew. In essence, this principle has as its basic an idea very similar to the legend of the Septuagint translations. Whatever language the Bible is in, God guides people to make sure that its sacredness was not lost in translation, which is the Hebrew, man. So I just want to read that because it said although numerous editions or versions of the Bible have been made over the past of 2 millennia, many American fundamentalists and evangelicals hold only one translation to be a author a author authoritative, the King James version, right? A authoritative, the King James version, also known as authorized version. Say King James I of England commissioned 47 of the finest scholars in the land to translate the Old Testament from Hebrew and Aramaic and the New Testament from Greek. Okay, say the impetus for the new translations, which was completed in 1611, came from the Church of England's push to produce not just an English translation, but one that's conformed to the tenets of the new angelical denominations. There was no mystical agreement by different scholars working independently. The translation was a group effort that took considerable labor and that generated controversial in its time. While Protestants worldwide, particularly English-speaking ones, continue to favor the King James Version, other Christians consider different translations to be authoritative. For at least 1500 years, Catholics used a 4th century CE translation of the scriptures into Latin known as the Vulgate. It's a meaning common used for ecclesiastical purpose. Christian Orthodox churches use versions of the Septuagint translated into language of their national churches. There are also study Bibles used primarily by scholars that aim for the most accurate modern translation of ancient language, which is the Paleo-Hebrew. There are common language translations in local slang and vernaculars and vernaculars for Christians seeking more modern and accessible Bibles. And translations such as the New Revised Standard Version aim to use gender-neutral language so as to be more inclusive of women. You say the interesting thing about these translations is that most are considered to be inspired, authoritative, or sacred to those who use them, even though they are sometimes far from the original language of the Bible, which is the ancient Paleo-Hebrew. This sense that the Bible's holiness transcends language, in fact, makes Christians unique among Western religious traditions. And that's the problem, man. Because these devils has took everything from the ancient Paleo-Hebrew to make it easier to be read so they can control people by their church doctrines, man, by their religion. So, Salakia. So when you go to, I went to the etymology, right? Because the brother did a video on this too in our camp. When you go to the etymology, now you got these Arabs, right? They say they got a word, and the word is al katab, right? Al katab. And the meaning of that word, when you go to the etymology, it's a transliteration of Arabic al katab, people of the book, right? So when you look it up, it say Islam, the Al Al-Kitab, okay, it say plural only, Islam, Christians, and Jews, right? Now we know when you go to Acts 11:26, if I ain't mistaken, let me see real quick. A little proofreading. They say peoples of the book, right? All Al-Kitab is peoples of the book. So when you go to Acts 11:26, it reads, I'm going to start at 25. Then departed Barnabas to Tarsus to seek Saul. And when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. So the Arabs, right, the Arabians, they call Al-Kitab peoples of the book, which is who? It say Christians and Jews. Al-Kitab, Islam, Christians and Jews tolerated by Islam. Okay? So, showing you that everybody know who the Hebrew Israelites is, except you damn Hebrew Israelites. Now this is what Paul said in Acts 26 in verse 14. And when we were all fallen to the earth, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks, right? So Paul said Yahushua spoke to him in Hebrew. Now when you go to Genesis, I think it's chapter 10. Genesis chapter 11, right? This is what it reads. In Genesis chapter 11, verse 1, the whole earth was of one language, right? And of one speech. What was that? The Hebrew, okay? The Hebrew. Now, when you start at Genesis chapter 10, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10, right? So it tell you, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood, right? Then when you read down, it tell you about the sons of Arphaxad. Then they go all the way to verse 16, Genesis 11:16, and it said, Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg, and Eber lived after he begot Peleg 430 years. Right? So when you keep reading, it tell you that it keep going, man. So who is Eber? Eber is who? Eber, we look up the word Eber, it means Hebrew, man. Okay? Hebrew. So these seed that came from the line of Shem, they all spoke Hebrew, man. Now when you go to verse, let me see. Just Genesis 11 and 24, 27. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begot Lot. Okay? So when you read Genesis 11:27, it said, now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, which is who? Abraham. Now when you go back to Genesis 11 and 17, it said, and Eber lived after he begot Peleg 430 years. And Peleg, it said, and begot sons and daughters. And Peleg lived 30 years and begot Reuel. And Peleg lived after he begot Reuel 209 years and begot sons and daughters. So I go down and tell you that verse 27, it said, now these are generations of Terah, which Terah begot Abram, right? Which became Abraham. So from Eber, which Eber is Hebrew, right? So letting you know that they spoke Hebrew, man. Oh, Salakia. So going here, now this is a verse out of the Quran, which is the Islamic book, which is still the Arab's book, right? Which came up by Wicked Jakes. This is page chapter 2, verse 122. This is what it say. O children of Israel, remember my favorite, which I have bestowed upon you, and that I prefer you over the worlds. Over the worlds, okay? Now you got Islam, you got these Islamic have this in the Quran, man. This page 2, verse 122. O children of Israel, remember my favorite, which I have bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you over the worlds. Now, when you go to Hebrews chapter 1, this is what the Lord said. Hebrews chapter 1 and 1. It say, power, who at sundry times in diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, which is Yahushua, whom he have appointed heir over all things, by whom also he made the worlds, with an S. Just like you see right here, man. O children of Israel, remember my favorite, which I have bestowed upon you, and that I preferred you over the worlds, all worlds. Eon, Orkamini, our world is cosmos, okay? Showing you that these Arabs, right, these Ishmaelites, they know that we are the peoples of the Bible, man, okay? Going back to this, man. Al-Khatib, man, okay? Which is mean what? People of the Bible, man, okay? So these people know that we are the peoples of the Bible, man. They know that. They know that, man. Oh, it's a lock it. So going back to that, go back to this right here. Again, it say this devil Ptolemy called together. Alexander the Great called together 70 of his best scholars. He charged them with a massive undertaking. Each one was to work independently, carefully translating Hebrew texts to Greek, man. So I just did this because the brother did it too, just to show that the Bible was written in Hebrew, man. Okay? Paul said Yahushua knocked him off the horse and spoke to him in a Hebrew tongue. Now, how the hell are you going to get around that? These are facts. These are facts, man. So, I just wanted to go into, matter of fact, let me look up something real quick. So, when you go into, see if I can pull up it like this. Let me see. See if I can pull up real quick. Salaki. What that? Genesis 11. Genesis 11 and 16. See if they're going to pull it up. Let me see. So, matter of fact, let me do it like this. Let me go out of here. Let me go right here. Let me go to this blue letter. I don't know what I was thinking about. Let's go right here and check this out. So Genesis 11 and 16, right? It say Eber. H5677. No, it says son of Joktan, son of Salah, great grandson of Shem, father of Peleg and Joktan, Benjamite, son of. I was trying to see. So it say Eber, the same as H5676, which is Hebrew, the name of two patriarchs and 4 Israelites. Okay? Eber and Heber. To the same as H56. So just showing, man. Just want to show that this Bible's written in Hebrew, man. Okay. Let me check this. I just want to go into it and see what they were saying. But it shows you, man. It was in the Hebrew, man. All you gotta do is look it up. So, Lord's will knows edifying. You gotta give our praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushua, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash. Give honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who teach well, and the sincere salutation to all the army pushing the truth toward the four winds of the earth, waking up the hope for the elect. Shalom to the Akwa for our listening and learning. I'm Isaiah coming to another lesson, truth, fact, faith, and edification. Shalom.